and welcome to the first edition of BVI Forward TV. I'm your host, Philomena Robertson. BVI Forward TV is a monthly program produced by the Financial Services Implementation Unit that will examine various issues that are relevant to the financial services industry. BVI Forward TV is one of the outreach tools that is being used as part of the BVI Forward campaign. What is BVI Forward, you may ask? Put simply, BVI Forward is the government's strategy to strengthen the financial services sector and to ensure its sustainable future. The strategy comprises of 10 initiatives, which you will learn more about shortly. A key element of BVI Forward is to engage the population, and to do so, an awareness and education campaign has been designed, hence this program and the many other outreach activities that are planned. The ultimate objective is to increase awareness of the financial services industry among the BVI population so that there's a greater understanding of the industry, its importance to the BVI economy, and its impact on the daily lives of residents. There are several guests for this first edition of BVI Forward TV, but we'll start with Mr. Kedrick Malone, who is currently the Director of the Financial Services Implementation Unit. That unit was set up to spearhead the implementation of the BVI Forward campaign. Mr. Malone is a long-standing public officer who has served as Interim Director of BVI Finance and also as Head of BVI's London office. Mr. Malone, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
It's really good to have you. Now, can you give us a brief synopsis of BVI Forward and how that campaign has evolved since its launch in September 2015?
Sure. BVI Forward, first of all, is the government's response to a number of issues affecting financial services. We're all aware that there was a crisis in 2008, and that has had a profound effect on financial services as it has on the economies of the world. We're living in an area of increased transparency, increased competition, so there were a lot of factors that government had to consider when looking at the financial services sector. Because it accounts for at least 70 cents on every dollar government spends, the government felt it prudent to relook at the industry, take a look at how it's faring with competition, how we're handling regulatory issues, and how we need to evolve the industry based on the new requirements for compliance and for competition. So they initiated a study of the industry, a formal study of the industry by McKinsey & Company, a world-renowned international financial consulting company, and that report formed the recommendations of what we are now terming BVI Forward.
So what are the recommendations? Because I think there were some 40 recommendations initially.
Yes. There were 40 recommendations. The committee looked at a lot of work that had been done before McKinsey was brought on board. And this work has been ongoing since 2012, around those years. McKinsey came on board in 2014, and there were a host of ideas discussed and recommended, but the government felt you couldn't do everything, so it prioritized. It selected 10 priority initiatives for implementation, and those were to be done over a 2-year period. It was felt that if those 10 things were done, BVI should be on track to look at other options going down the road.
Can you identify those initiatives for us and also explain to us what has been done, since the launch in terms of updating us on achievements where those initiatives are concerned?
Okay, let me just tell you what they are, first of all. First and foremost, the McKinsey recommended that BVI needed to revamp its International Finance Center, which is really the marketing and promotional arm of the government's financial services sector. We needed to have a world-class body to do that in line with our competitors. They also felt that we needed to deal with the issues regarding the industry and the regulator to make sure that the regulator and the industry were working in concert, that the level of service that the industry was receiving from the regulator was what was needed to drive the industry, because regulatory aspect of the industry is extremely important because of the international requirements. They also recommended that because of our narrow product base, with mainly in corporations being the core product of the BVI, we needed to add more value-added services. We needed to diversify the financial services sector, look at what's called value-added services, because one of the issues regarding the evolution of the industry was to ensure that the BVI was providing services that were more substance-based, meaning that in corporations, we needed to make sure that the companies that were doing business in the territory were actually going to be based in the territory, which would answer a lot of the concerns around transparency issues. They also recommended that if you're going to bring these new services into the territory, or you need to create new services in the territory, you have to look at your immigration and labor structures for work permits. So reform of immigration and labor and work permit processes was an important part of it. In addition to that, they recommended that you have to look at your infrastructure issues. The objective was to have BVI become a center on par with other international finance centers. So which means that you would need to be able to have your telecom services, access to and from the territory needs to be on par with other international finance centers. McKinsey also recommended that if we're going to create new industries, if we're going to make changes to the industry, we have to make sure that the population the capability of the population is increased to meet the future demands of the industry. So it recommended that training and education and internships and all of these programs that are going to help strengthen your human resource should be put into place. And last but most importantly, they recommended that with all of these changes taking place, it's important that the population be part of the process, that people need to understand more about the industry. They need to understand the role it plays in their daily lives, and really the gap between financial services and the community needs to be narrower to the point where every citizen should be able to explain what the country does for a living and why it is important to the livelihood of the country.
So that's a very huge mandate for the Financial Services Implementation Unit. It's
a huge mandate, but the structure for implementing it there's a supportive structure. So first and foremost, the implementation unit comes at the end of the process. The beginning of the process, of course, is the recommendations from the study. Each of the recommendations has a person assigned as a sponsor. And the sponsor's role is to gather the industry persons and the government persons and all of the stakeholders together to look at the recommendation and to say, how are we going to do this? What is the most effective way of doing this for the BVI? And that's a very important part, because that is where you come up with the actual action plans that are needed to get these things in place. After the sponsors make the recommendations, they go to a steering committee, which is chaired by the Premier, and there are 5 government members and 3 private sector members on the steering committee. And their job is to review the recommendations to make sure they're in line with where government wants to go. And since it's chaired by the Premier, you pretty much have a clear indication as to what government's position is. After the steering committee reviews the recommendations, they either pass them to my unit for implementation, or if the Premier deemed necessary for Cabinet to endorse, they'll go to Cabinet for approval. After that, they come to my unit. So it's a tall order in terms of all that has to be done, but there's a very large supporting cast. And our job is to just implement. And I must stress that a lot of things have been recommended in the past, but the fact that we are dedicated to just implementing will ensure that things get done.
Right. And it's a small unit, yes, with a tall order, but one of the keys to the success of this would be to institutionalize the changes that have been recommended, working with immigration and labor, working with education. How has that been going?
It's been going quite well, and it's been quite encouraging. We've spent a lot of time with certain departments who are key to implementing the changes. So for instance, immigration and labor reform and the work permit process. Very, very important to any country who's seeking to attract and retain talent. So we have a team of specialists who have spent the last 3-4 months in immigration and labor. And I can tell you, we know all there is to know about immigration and labor. And what that does, it helps us to understand how these departments work, what is necessary to make the changes, to get to know the people in the departments and how they work. And really, it's a very involved process. And I really must take this opportunity to commend the Chief Immigration Officer and the Labor Commissioner for having opened up their departments to us, cooperated and shared with us all that they do, the good and the bad, and all of the demands and stresses of dealing with work permits and immigration issues on a daily basis. So we now have the understanding to now go in and implement the recommendations that were submitted by the sponsors. So it's a very good process. I think it's something that we realize that you need to, if you're going to make any substantive change in any part of government, you need to really take this kind of approach where you go and you understand how the front line is operating and what their issues are, because things are not always the way they seem.
So obviously you've achieved quite a lot of work in the last
Yes.
couple of months where BVI Forward is concerned. And smack in the middle of this, we have a situation that has now been dubbed the Panama Papers.
Yes.
Now, leaks have happened in the past,
Right.
and BVI rode out that storm. But this one is, the magnitude of it is simply mind-boggling. I mean,
Yes.
11.5 million documents that's been leaked from a company that actually has an office here in the BVI. The leak
Yes.
originated in Panama,
Right.
but obviously there are implications for the BVI. What has been the government's response to this situation?
Right. Well, obviously it's a regulatory issue, and the regulatory has issued a statement, which you would have heard by now, that they would be investigating the situation, the allegations and the stories that have come out of the leaks. The Premier has made a statement about BVI's position on it, which is in the same vein, and really showing that BVI has a long history of strong regulatory standards. Our standards are among the highest in the industry, higher than many of the G7 countries, and many of the organizations that regulate the industry have commended and BVI is on its standard. The OECD has rated us largely compliant. So we have a very strong regulatory legacy, and that has been put forth. I think today, as we're taping, the Prime Minister in the House of Commons defended the overseas territories in financial services, speaking specifically to the Panama case. So BVI has responded. We've had to be thoughtful in how we respond because there were BVI structures misused in the instance. And we will continue to see what the Financial Services Commission comes up with in their investigation. And we will continue to do what we do well, which is to provide a world-class service to facilitate trade in the global economy and continue to improve our standards to make sure that when these things happen, that we are doing what we're supposed to do to maintain the integrity of the industry.
Okay, so I take from that, the biggest takeaway is that we have a strong regulatory environment, and that's not something that happened yesterday. That has been in existence for quite a while, and we're continuously improving that environment.
Absolutely. We have a strong regulatory environment. We have a very strong brand. We've had leaks before, and the brand is still very strong. And I think it will continue to be strong. And it's also very timely because this program, part of our objective is to increase the awareness and education among the population of the industry. And now that everyone's attention is focused on financial services, we're going to use the opportunity to provide some good information, some good education, so that every one of us as BVI citizens of this territory, persons who live here, should be able to defend and explain what we do for a living.
Okay, that's a perfect segue into our next subject,
Yes.
which is engaging the population.
Yes.
You mentioned it as one of the priority initiatives as part of BVI Forward, making the population more aware. And of course, this situation now with the Panama Papers, all attention focused on the industry.
Right.
It's an opportune moment, to get persons focused and get them to understand the industry because there's been this huge gap
Right.
between the industry and the population over the years. How important would you say it is, in terms of bridging that gap and increasing the level of awareness locally?
It's extremely important. I mean, until you get the population involved in what's happening, it's going to be very difficult to make lasting change. Because all of us as citizens, we are working in the industry, we know persons who work in the industry, we benefit every day from the industry, so we have to narrow that gap. And I think once we do that, we will create other opportunities. People will see opportunities in the industry, and that will spiral into get more involvement. It will translate into opportunities in career, opportunities in entrepreneurship. So the whole process begins with awareness. And we're not only trying to make the grown population aware, we're trying to make the children aware as well. Because if you plant the seeds very young in the minds of children, that grows. So I think, in summary, I think this is a good turning point for BVI. We know we have to embrace the industry more. We have benefited from it for a long time. I think this is a signal for us to take more ownership of the industry. And if we do that, we can continue to be part of the growth as the industry evolves.
Okay. So we need to engage the population. BVI Forward launched in September 2015. We're here at this point several months into the process. I know there's been a lot going on in the background in terms of just how do we engage the population, because we want to make sure that when we step out and do what we need to do, that we actually get people's attention and get them on board.
Right.
Can you enlighten us as to some of the plans that you've come up with in terms of engaging the population? Right.
Well, to engage the population, you have to first understand a bit about the population. So we've sort of created a communication program. We are targeting a great deal of that communication towards young people because they're the ones who have to embrace the industry in terms of seeking the education, finding the career opportunities to be part of it. So, and we also focus on persons who are in the industry or people who work in that type of professional environment, and then the whole wider population. Who would need to understand what the industry is and how it affects their lives. So we have created a communication program. We've recruited about 60 persons from the industry to be spokespersons in different forms. We've recruited persons from the wider community outside of financial services to help us with the communication. Because when you're communicating, you want to make sure that everyone feels involved, everyone feels included, and the persons we have selected were designed to reach different segments of the community. And the campaign is multimedia. We have our own website. We have radio commercials. This show is part of it. We have, we'll be in radio talk shows. We have a newspaper column. We will have bulletins, social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever vehicle exists for communication, we'll be using it to try to reach out to the entire population of the BVI.
Okay, so it's definitely a broad campaign because we need to touch everyone within the community.
Absolutely.
And I know you have public service announcements as one of the tools that you're using.
Right.
So we'll take the opportunity here to view one of the PSAs that have been produced.
Okay.
For decades, BVI has relied on financial services for its economic prosperity and the standard of living we've come to enjoy.
Times have changed. Competition has grown. International pressures have intensified, and the BVI must adapt.
BVI Forward is the government's strategy to strengthen the financial services industry. It is a campaign of far-reaching initiatives serving as the engine that will drive the continuing evolution and innovation of financial services in the BVI. This will help to maintain the territory's competitive advantage in the context of changing international regulatory landscape and growing competition.
There are 10 initiatives under the BVI Forward campaign. Revamp the International Finance Center, strengthen the business development function, engage the population, build BVI lander capability, pursue tax initiatives, enhance customer service at the Financial Services Commission, attract and offer value-added services, reform immigration and labor, invest in infrastructure, and establish a dedicated delivery unit to coordinate and drive implementation.
BVI Forward. It's about me, it's about you, it's about all of us.
It's about working together to safeguard the future prosperity of the British Virgin Islands.
Now, BVI Forward is really a government spearheaded campaign.
Yes.
But its success depends largely on the engagement of just about everybody.
That's right.
And we have lots of stakeholders. You know, we have the industry, we have the general population. But one particular group would be the politicians and the opposition members of the House of Representatives. They're equally key to the process. Have you engaged the opposition at all in this process?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have, about a month ago, we actually sat with the members of the opposition and the Speaker of the House of Assembly, and we updated them on BVI Forward. They very enthusiastically welcomed the update, has some very good suggestions. And I think it's important because if you're going to reach out to the entire population, you need to make sure that the political representative of the people also are up to date and have information that they too can share. I mean, they are our biggest ambassadors because they're the persons who the community looks to for leadership. So we absolutely would continue to update all members of the House of Assembly, including the opposition, on a regular basis.
Okay. Do you want to share the sort of response that you've had from them?
They were very supportive of the initiative. They thought it was a very well thought out plan. We had actually updated them on some of the actions that had taken place so far. They welcomed those and had some suggestions, and they committed their support to delivering the information and discussing it with their constituency and giving their full support to it.
Okay, very good news. So as mentioned, you know, there are many other stakeholders in the process of strengthening the BVI financial services industry. And in the next segment of the program, we'll be introduced to some of those spokespersons. Do stay with us. You're in tune to BVI Forward TV. We'll be right back. Welcome back to BVI Forward TV. It's the first of what will be a monthly program that is produced by the Financial Services Implementation Unit to help raise awareness about the financial services industry. It is time now to introduce you to our second group of guests who are spokespersons for the Education and Awareness campaign of BVI Forward. Earlier in the show, Mr. Malone provided some insight into the various elements of the BVI Forward campaign. Mr. Malone, what I'll ask you now to do is to detail the various categories of spokespersons, because these two individuals here, they represent those groups of spokespersons.
Okay. Well, we felt it was very important that we reach all segments of the population. So we created categories of spokespersons to help us deliver the message and communicate the information. We created a category called endorsers, and endorsers were the senior managing director, partner level individuals in the industry who we felt would be able to convey the industry's position with regards to the various issues, the industry's support, and to give an international perspective on BVI financial services, where it is and where it's going. And those persons we felt would be able to help us get the strategic and the vision for the industry across both locally and internationally.
And the mentors?
The mentors, we think, have a very important role to play, and that is mostly with regards to helping us to build capability. Mentors are the persons who are at different levels of the industry. They have achieved in their own respective areas, but we feel they also have the ability to connect with the industry persons, with young persons in the industry, and can give them a feel and understanding as to what it takes to be successful, how did they achieve what they achieved, what are some of the pointers to give them some inspiration, some motivation, It's a tall order, but I think we've found persons in the industry who can help us do that. And that's very critical to the future of the industry.
Okay, excellent. So we have the description of the groups and we have the names of our two guests, but let's learn some more about you as persons and your roles in the companies that you work in. Ray, we can start with you. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Ray Wormuth and I'm a partner at OJ, which is one of the international law firms here in the BVI. We have offices around the world, as do many of the law firms and accountancy practices here. I've been in the BVI for 16 years, so I've been a lawyer for almost 25, so I've been in international financial services for that sort of period of time. Yeah.
Okay, well, welcome, Ray.
Thank you.
Kimberly?
Well, I am an associate at Harney's, also an international firm in the BVI. I joined Harney's as a member of the Professional Development Program in 2009, and I have been with Harney's ever since. I actually had the opportunity to work in the Harney's Hong Kong office for a year and a half. I went in 2013, and I came back at the end of 2014. So that was a great experience, and I think gave me a bit of an international perspective, having lived in a very busy commercial industry.
Okay, excellent. So we have some idea as to your background and your experience. Ray, coming back to you, how would you rate the importance of the BVI Forward campaign in terms of securing the future of the financial services industry?
I think it's absolutely critical, and certainly in the current landscape more generally for financial services. I think the private sector is extremely positive about both the McKinsey report itself and BVI Forward, which, as we've heard, puts that into motion. And I don't think we can underestimate the importance of having a very clear plan for this important industry. And that's exactly what BVI Forward gives us, a very clear, defined plan for all of the stakeholders in the territory and all of the stakeholders and participants in the sector to understand, to participate in, and importantly, as Mr. Malone said earlier, to deliver upon. So it's absolutely crucial, I think, at this time. Absolutely.
Okay. We have a sense that there's a general willingness on the part of the industry, to collaborate and make this campaign work. I mean, you were here, we've spoken to a lot of other persons within the industry. From your perspective, what is the general tone in the industry as it relates to this campaign and, just the general willingness to make this work, because it is the bread and butter of the BVI?
Indeed. I think we've been fortunate. There's always been strong collaboration between the public sector and the private sector, but I think this has really brought that to the fore. What we're seeing is a very defined plan and a lot of collaboration around how we can deliver that collectively for the territory. It's a government plan, but I think the private sector is very pleased to have been involved at the very outset. It's been consulted on at key stages, and we've all got very important roles within that and defined roles. So we all understand our part to play in delivering those objectives. So I think industry is very positive. It's clear that having a very good path forward is very helpful for everyone to focus minds, and that short-term, medium-term plan is key.
Right. And I mean, even in the general course of business, in terms of your business development function, you would market and promote the industry. So, as you say, just having this defined plan now, setting out roles for everybody, it just makes the job so much easier, right?
Yeah, it certainly does. And I think it gives everybody that view forward, that roadmap as to where we all need to go collectively, and we can all feed into that with our own businesses and work around it. Yes.
Right. Thanks, Ray. Kimberly, let's go back to you now. You spoke about your Hong Kong experience, being part of the Harney's Professional Development Program, and then getting that Hong Kong experience. Now, your role and the role of mentors like yourself in the BVI Forward campaign, as Mr. Malone mentioned, it's a really tall order. We're really counting on, the mentors to engage the young persons, to show them the parts that, they can use to get involved in the industry. How do you see your experience thus far being a good example for the youngsters to follow?
I think primarily a lot of us as young people, we obviously look to other young persons and even older persons for the way forward. How can we be like this person? How can we do what this person is doing? I think that there is a lot of scope in the industry for persons like myself, and even persons that don't, for instance, study law. You know, I had a very interesting conversation with a young person very recently, and she said to me, "I want to be a lawyer." And I said, "Oh, great. Tell me why." And she said, "Well, you know." I said, "No, I don't know. Tell me why." And then she said, "Well, you know, I think it's a good profession." And, you know, just very generalist. And I thought, you don't want to be a lawyer, so let me try to draw out of you. And then we started to speak about her experiences at university, how is she doing? And she's like, "You know, I'm doing finance right now." She's actually doing economics and finance. And she just went on and on about finance and how great it is. And, you know, economics is so interesting and I'm so loving it. I said, "Honey, hey, you don't want to be a lawyer. You want to be in the financial services industry. You want to do something with finance." And she thought, so you need to think about it. And now she's doing a double major in finance and economics. And I think things like that is where I believe that I would be able to assist young persons like myself. I think we have had many opportunities to go into the secondary schools on job fairs, speak to the young people, get a sense of what their interests are. When I was in high school, we had to sit with our guidance counselor. I don't know how the process works now, and tell them what we want to be. And funnily enough, I said, "I want to be a lawyer." And I had my first job at Harney, Westwood and Regals as a job trainee in the summer of 1999, the Easter of 1999. And I graduated in June, and they called me back and said, "What are you doing for the summer?" And I've had a relationship with the firm. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would end up there, but because of the positive sort of experiences that I had from very young, it was a natural path for me. And I think there are lots of young people that are looking for that natural path, and there's so much scope in the industry for that. And I think one of my jobs as a mentor is to help to channel and to push these young people in these various areas. And it doesn't have to be law, because God knows I could never have been an accountant. You know, I could barely count. So, you know, there's something in the industry for everybody. And I think one of my roles, my primary role, is to help young people to identify where they fit into the grand scheme, because there's quite a bit to be done.
Right, that's a very good point. Ray, as a senior, you know, executive at Auger, I would want you to elaborate on that as well, because it's not just about lawyers. It's not, you know, just about accountants. There are so many roles. There are a myriad of roles, you know, that we can fulfill in the financial services industry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, you know, accountants, lawyers, managers, all the way through administrative assistants, all the way through. And I think the key thing is this public-private partnership, and it's really a territory-wide partnership, so that everyone is focused on trying to achieve the same things and understanding the opportunities within the industry and how the industry itself works. You know, not in any great detail, but just the basics to stir that interest. And then the role that I fulfil is one of the endorsers, so we have 20 endorsers. That's a role that really builds on that partnership between the public sector and the private sector, so that we in turn can try and drive our businesses in that direction, that then helps the mentors bring younger people through into the industry. So it's a very clever, smart plan that's really thought of everything, and I think we stand a very good chance of delivering it on the back of that well-organised plan.
Okay, and you know, speaking to the well-organized plan, Mr. Malone, that ties right into building BVI Land a capability, because in order to be prepared to fulfill these various roles in the industry, you know, persons have to prepare themselves, and that is one of the initiatives that's being covered on the BVI Forward.
It is, and we've had some very good discussions with the education establishment. We've met with everyone in education, with primary school principals, with the education officers, with the high school principal, and the guidance counselors. And the whole idea is to create that link. And we're having a meeting with the minister soon, because we felt that we want to report to the ministry the enthusiasm of the industry to work with the education establishment, and perhaps have some sort of a memorandum that sort of encapsulate that enthusiasm and that cooperation, because I think if the industry is willing to work and the young people need the intervention of the industry to be able to prepare better for the industry, I think it's a win-win for everyone. So we really look forward to working with the education, bringing the education institutions together with the industry to make the experience, the training, and the education more relevant to the industry. And I think over a period of time, you will see that our capability will start to increase. And so we really welcome the support of the industry and these folks. And I think we have about 60 others between mentors and endorsers and Team BVI members of the industry who have jumped on board with BVI Forward to work with our champions from the wider community. And I think we realize that this can work if we all work together. And so I really appreciate these guys coming on and being part of our show.
Yeah, that's definitely what it's about, working together to move the financial services industry forward. Kimberly, your story, you know, interning with Harney's, job training, professional development, and being employed there. You're actually like a poster child for for the campaign.
I think one of the most important things is for people to feel a part. When people feel a part, you get so much energy out of them and you get so much enthusiasm. And I think feeling a part is the beginning of building capability. I think there is, like I said before, there's so much scope in the industry for everybody. When you go into the schools and you say, you know, there's something for you to do and you to do and Timmy for you to do as well, you start to engage them, you start to make them feel relevant to the entire process and to the entire industry. And so they then develop a sense of national pride. It extends beyond knowing what the national anthem is. It starts to go into their sort of bloodstream that BVI Financial Services is a part of who we are. This is an industry that we want to preserve. And if you can start to get that into the heads of our little ones, it is a sense of pride. And you don't want to see your industry and your BVI and what the BVI represents, you don't want to see it go to waste. And so I think that is what we need to drive at. Because I think beginning there with our little children and even getting into the schools and making them feel a part and making them understand their relevance to the entire industry is the beginning of then looking at someone like me. And there are many others who have had opportunities like I have had, who, you know, you jump on it. When I started at Harney's in 1999, I had no idea that I would end up there in this role right now. And it has been a process. I started off doing sort of watching people doing corporations, and I actually worked for a very long time under Richard Parsons. And he, you know, started to train me to do other things. Then I said to him I wanted to go to university. And then I went to university, I came back, I said, you know, I think I want to do property law. I worked with Sheila George, and she really took me under her wing and, you know, showed me things, got exposed to that, and then thought, let me do funds. Then I worked with Ross Monroe, and, you know, and then I thought, I think I would really like litigation. And, you know, I worked with Phil Kite, who's now in a London office, and now I work with Andy Thorpe. And I have had so many experiences, but it begun with me saying, okay, I think I would like this. And that's another thing that we need to sort of instill into our young people. We need to know what we want, and we need to ask for what we want. And it all ties into having that sense of pride in who you are and what you represent and the brand that you represent. And I think for me, that is where I would want to focus, helping our young people to understand that you have a role to play in this big picture. And when they speak of the BVI 10 years from now, you need to be able to stand up and say, I was a part of that movement that got us on the map, or that kept us on the map and that kept us relevant.
Yeah, and that's why the mentors in this campaign are really important, because they cut across all of the different careers in the financial services industry. So it's not just about a lawyer. You can be a messenger. You can be a human resources official. But it's just about getting in, you know, in whatever capacity and being part of the industry. And like you say, showing that national pride.
Yes.
Yeah. Ray, the industry right at this time, I mean, we have endured severe challenges in recent years. Most recently, we have the situation with the Panama Papers. But looking forward, and we need an endorsement here for the future of financial services in the BVI. What assurances can you help us to give that, you know, financial services remains relevant to the BVI?
Yeah.
We have strong regulatory environment, regulatory jurisdiction. The future exists, yes?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the government did the smart thing, not last week, 4 or 5 years ago, by implementing and requesting the McKinsey report. All of that background work had been done, but to bring in the best consultant in the world to verify the work that the government had done really gave us, at that stage, the plan for the future. So that came into force in 2012. It's been worked on in the meantime, various guises since. So that plan has taken a while to build, and we now have it. And while chaos breaks out, and this is a multifaceted industry, as we've heard, what we have now is something that we can always go back to, this guiding light about how do we bring everything together for the territory, everyone in the territory, to look down the path of financial services. So I think while those things are going on in the world, we are quite focused on what we need to do. And this was all put in place, you know, at the time that these things were already happening. And we've had the right strong responses in the regulatory front and on the regulatory front and at a governmental front. So I think we are very well placed in a world that changes by the day. So, you know, I think our circumstances around us in recent weeks have been changing rapidly, but our position has been absolutely, resolutely the same. So I think we are in a very strong position.
Okay, that's excellent to hear, because we're working here on BVI Forward, you know, strong, sustainable financial services. We want to ensure that a future exists. And from the words of our two guests here, there is definitely a future for financial services. The mentors, you have your work cut out for you, and the endorsers as well. You bring, you know, international legitimacy to that industry that really forms the backbone of the British Virgin Islands. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us here today. We'll be right back for the third and final segment of this, our first program. Stay with us. Welcome back to BVI Forward TV. In our third and final segment, we introduce another two spokespersons for the BVI Forward campaign. Joining me now are Mr. Renard Estridge, a litigation attorney at the firm Maitland, and Mr. Sam Henry, who is a BVI Forward champion. Mr. Malone is still here with us, and I'll have him begin by explaining the final two categories of spokespersons that we have as part of the BVI Forward campaign.
Okay. So as we said before, it's important to get people who can speak to the wider population. Everyone can reach a particular segment. So we created two additional categories. We have BVI Forward champions, and BVI Forward champions are persons who in their own right have a constituency, a following. They're members of the community, they're known in the community, and they're listened to and respected in the community. So we selected those persons to make sure that the various segments that they have that listen to them, that their constituency will be able to get the message. So we have Sam representing the BVI Forward champions, and we have 12 other champions so far in the program. And we also felt it was important to get the industry persons who know the industry, who work in the industry, to be able to help to explain some of the things that the industry does about trust and captive and funds and incorporation. So to break the language down a bit so everyone can understand that. So we welcome Renard, who is an industry person, to help us do that. And together, all of us will make sure we get every single person out there understanding financial services. Okay, excellent. Gentlemen, I'll just have you give a few brief words of introduction about yourself. Sam, can we start with you?
Well, I think by now, those who are watching by already know who I am, but I'm Julio Henry. Work in the tourism industry. Having the opportunity every day to talk to people, understand a little bit about the financial services. So I decided that it's a good cause.
Very good to have you on board, Sam.
That's right.
Hi, my name is Renard Estridge, and I've been working in the financial services industry for a while now, I would say for the past 20 years. And I started really early on, I think out of high school. One of the first things I did was started working with the registry here, then got into the private sector. So from very early on, I've been in the industry. And so I've been even more involved with it over the past couple of years on different committees, and definitely involved with BVI Forward. Yeah, that's what I've been doing for the past couple of times.
Okay, and you've had the benefit of both the private sector experience and the public sector side
Yes.
of things.
Yes.
How would you say that has helped you to where you are today?
Okay, well, you know, the public sector is definitely important because you know, it definitely provides jobs for locals here in the BVI, and it definitely started me on my way towards financial services. So when I wanted to see the other side of it now, how the private sector work, you know, I already had a little bit of experience within the industry and financial services. So then going into the private sector now, that was you know, challenging as well. You know, definitely dealing with the more practical and hands-on side of things. So I think both avenues has its advantages so far as helping people to become stronger financial services persons.
Right, and we can definitely use you as a mentor for the campaign because you've had the benefit of both worlds. So persons can see that, okay, I can enter the industry, but I don't have to be tied to, say, the public sector or the private sector. There's scope for me to move around and make a contribution in a different capacity.
Yes, definitely. I mean, there are a number of different persons that are working within the registry. There are different persons working with the regulator up at the Financial Services Commission, and and they're doing that so far as mutual funds, incorporations, the wide scope of financial services, and you get that stuff on the private side as well. So yeah, it offers the wide scope whether you want to go into it from the private side or the public side of the industry.
Right. Okay, Sam, let's move on over to you now. You've told us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to get involved in the BVI Forward campaign. Now, what is the most important message that you would want to give the persons out there, the persons that you interact with on a daily basis as it relates to the financial services industry?
A better understanding. I think that's the key thing that is missing right now. Understanding the industry, all the different services that the industry provide. Whenever you hear or you get questions, in my case, I get a lot of questions or comments. It's always about what type of jurisdiction we might be. It's always about taxes. But people never understand there's also other type of legitimate services. So my response is always, whatever they do in New York, whatever they do in Delaware, whatever they do in the county in Las Vegas or Nevada, we do it here, but we just do it better. So I think what's really missing is a better understanding of the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
And how do you think we go about improving that understanding? Yes, we're doing the education and awareness, but it's also persons like yourselves, persons who interact with our visitors, with the foreigners, helping them to understand what really happens here.
Well, before what happened recently with the Panama Papers, I think BVI Forward campaign was probably one of the most strategic and smartest approach that came out of the McKinsey report. Before I even knew about it, after I was invited to a media breakfast and I learned a little bit about it, I thought that's the way forward. We should have been doing that 10 years ago, but nonetheless, we started it, and I think that's one of the best strategic way to move forward. That's one of the best way to engage the population in doing what we're doing now. We get people like myself, we get other people in other industries, people in different areas, and you educate them. And they now, in turn, educate the general public. They will educate the people who are coming in on their vacation, who are just having curious questions, how to answer those questions in a more profound way where it doesn't seem like you're trying to hide anything, but you have a better understanding of the industry.
Okay. You mentioned the Panama Papers, and it has been stated that it could be an opportune time, to engage the population. Do you want to elaborate a bit on that?
Well, for me, I look at it. I remember, I'd give you a little story real quick. Anytime you see any type of negative publicity, to me, it's always an opportune time to sell yourself even more. Not in a negative way. You take that opportunity and you say, hey, somebody's saying that I'm black on one side, but guess what? I'm light on the other side 10 times over. So I think it's a golden opportunity now for the industry, BVI Forward, which is, I think, is the right arm to engage with international media, with people from different areas, do BBC reports, interviews, do New York Times interviews, and constantly have that, what are your initiatives? What is the BVI about? What is the financial services? What do we offer? And break it down. Break it down for the everyday guy who may not understand. And I think for the people who haven't seek the opportunity to invest, those same people are now saying, wait a minute, no wonder Sam over there is doing so well. What is he doing? Where is he at in the BVI? Maybe I should invest my $100,000 there as well, because there's obviously a good opportunity to grow your portfolio, to invest, to set aside money in trust for your family. So there's all type of services that we offer. But again, it's really all about information. The more people know about what you're doing, the better you come out of it.
Right. Bernard, do you also share the view that it's an opportune time to sell ourselves?
Yes, I definitely agree with Sam's sentiments. We shouldn't just look at this as negative publicity. This is actually an opportunity for us to get the BVI out there, and we're going to do what we need to do so far as combating the wrong impressions. So the Premier has put out statements. The government is going to make sure that we say that what we need to say. But it's also an opportunity for us to sell ourselves. People are already talking about the BVI. Okay, so it's now for us to say, this is who we are. This is how we help the not only the economy here in the BVI, but the global economy, and help just the economy of the world to run basically. And I think it's a perfect opportunity. And so far as us here locally are concerned, persons locally are talking about it as well. I get calls, for the past couple of days asking me, what do I think about this? What's happening here? And it's an opportunity for us to educate local persons, to kill negative stereotypes, and once you start that conversation, they understand a bit more about it. They feel more enfranchised with regards to the BVI financial services, and they understand that, okay, well, this is something that's not just out there. It relates to me as well. And once they get that better understanding about it, they can, better speak about it. So I think education and definitely speaking about it is very important.
Right.
It's also an opportunity for the BVI Financial Services to also engage and encourage. He just said something about enfranchising, incorporating local investors. We have several people here who have real money, and we have vehicles here that can help them also grow, that can help them invest internationally, and they didn't even know that these vehicles exist. So I think this is the perfect opportunity to even engage a local population in local investors in that process.
Yes.
You spoke about local investment opportunities. Under the capability program, we have something called the Financial Services Entrepreneurship, which will be coming to you soon. So we've considered the fact that we're not just trying to attract investment in, we're also trying to develop capability internally, but we're also trying to attract entrepreneurial development within the BVI. So we do have an financial services entrepreneurial program coming.
So BVI Forward covers everything.
We cover, we have to, because I really think, in a strange kind of way, the Panama Papers have created an opportunity it's almost like an entree for us to do what we're doing. I was always told in sales, you have to first get people's attention, and then you tell them what you want to tell them. So we now have everyone's attention. So this is the perfect time for us to start the program. And I think from this point on, this is the perfect time to really start pouring information into the heads of the population. One of the things we've done in that regard is we've created something called Financial Services 101. We actually sat down and we wrote what we call the Layman's Language to Financial Services 101. It's going to be up on our website in about later on this week, we think. And we're going to use that as a tool for educating the population. I mean, we'll be delivering little snippets of it through the mentors and through the champions and through the endorsers. But on our website is about 20 questions answering all of the kinds of questions people will ask about financial services in layman's language. We're going to make it into even simpler language. We're going to use what we call infographics, which are like illustrations. So we take the whole issue of education very seriously. Once you empower someone with education, with information, you've given them the tools that they need to propel themselves to whatever level they desire or they feel motivated to achieve. The key is information and education.
Okay. Any final thoughts from you, gentlemen, before we put a wrap on the program?
Well, real quick, I just want to say that I think we're on the right track. Take this opportunity, run with it. I think we're on the right track to move the BVI financial services forward, and it's also going to bring a big boost to our tourism industry. So it's a golden opportunity, a win-win, a two-sided coin, financial services and tourism.
Yeah. Just in conclusion, I would like to say that the whole of the BVI, private sector and public sector, is involved with BVI Forward and the sustainability of financial services. So we're all involved, and we're all committed to the BVI in terms of whatever the best interest is in the BVI. So we're all in, so far as the government is concerned, the public sector is concerned, and we're going to continue that momentum.
Okay, excellent. Mr. Malone, as we bring the curtains down, what's the one takeaway you want to leave with the audience today?
Well, I would just like people to know that we have a plan, we have a program, we have a commitment from the government to move financial services forward. The BVI Forward program will touch every man, woman, and child in this country, because financial services touches every man, woman, and child in this country. I think it's time for us to take ownership of the industry. We've enjoyed the fruits of it for many years without, I would say, not too much strenuous work. But now, if we want to continue to enjoy the fruits of the industry, we have to do some of the heavy lifting. And I think it begins with education, awareness, information. We're going to do that. We have the 10 initiatives which have been outlined for you. We're going to be reporting on those as we go along. We've made significant progress. There are matters before Cabinet we'll be updating the community on in the coming weeks and days. So I think it's a bright future. I think we will survive the Panama Papers issue. We will survive other issues that will come at us, and we will continue to make financial services the vehicle that has given us a standard of living that we achieved and that we are proud of. It's part of our culture. It's part of who we are. And I think if we work together, we will continue to enjoy the benefits of it into the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. And a huge thank you to all of the guests who were part of this first BVI Forward TV program. To the viewers, thank you so much for joining us. And be sure to tune in again. Stay up to date on all things BVI Forward. Visit our website, www.bviforward.vg, and follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. BVI Forward, a collective effort for the common good of all of us here in the BVI. I'm Philomena Robertson. Thank you again for joining us.